Today, we discuss the Packers' 2024 draft class and assign them a grade on their performance. We also talk Goody's process in selecting them. Find out more on today's episode of SoundsGouda.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Hey. Yeah, ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
Welcome in another episode, SoundsGouda. Thank you, everyone, for coming back and taking a listen to us. I am one of your two co-hosts. My name is Rob Ralph. Next to me is my best friend, Jordan Olson. Thank you, as always, for coming back in. Just know that we do have new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please make sure to give us a like, sub, and follow us there on those platforms. Today's episode, just like we alluded to in the beginning, we're going to be discussing the Packers 2024 draft class, how each pick did throughout the season, give some initial grades and metrics, some analysis from both our sides, and see how that compared to some of our other draft crushes and wants that went to obviously some other NFL teams as well. I don't think that there's anywhere better to start, though, Jordan. Let's talk about some of the coaching updates.
Yeah, obviously, since the last time we've talked, we have a little bit of housekeeping to clean up on. When we last talked about coaching updates, we were a little worried about the Packers process and if we would get Joe buried again and end up with a third choice. But the Packers hired DeMarcus Covington, a defensive line coach, a 35-year-old who was the Pats 2024 defensive coordinator last year and has been with the Patriots since 2017. I really think that this is a great hire, Rob, and I'd be interested to get a few more of your thoughts on it.
Yeah. Obviously, anybody that's handpicked by Bill Belichick, who is known as the defensive mind of the NFL, obviously he's won a lot of Super Bowls, so he's got the facts and the merits and the stats to back it up. He was the defensive coordinator last year for the New England Patriots. Obviously, he's out the boot with Vrabel back in there this year, but I thought that it was a decent defense, and even from his time and his metrics from him being a defensive line coach, did really well. And any single time you're handpicked by Bill Belichick, that's always a good sign. So I'm pretty excited for this hire.
Yeah, and at least on the defensive side of the ball, I applaud the diversity. I know Matt LaFleur gets dinged a little bit that it's kind of the good old boys club, and you have to be from that tree of the Shanahan tree to get a job. Which I think there's fair critique in that process that new ideas and new blood is good, and Jeff Hafley's definitely willing to do that. I'm excited to see if this can improve the performance of LVN, Sean Gary, Kenny Clark, etc. in 2025. Less to talk about here, but we also confirmed that Sean Mannion would become our quarterbacks coach. He was a 2024 offensive assistant. That was his first year in the NFL as a coach, really his first year as a coach in general. So he definitely is going to be learning on the job. Hopefully he absorbed a lot last year from Tom Clements. But I know there's a lot of hype about him being a future, bright offensive mind, even offensive coordinator. People are always looking for the next young thing, and I think there's some idea with Sean Mannion that he could be one of those guys. So hopefully him and Jordan Love mesh well, and he's able to bring Jordan Love to that next level that we've talked about many times on this show next year. And then, Rob, tell me, we had a swap. Unfortunately, as we predicted, James Campanelli went to Jacksonville to become their defensive coordinator, but the Packers promoted Sean Dugan into that role. What do you think he brings to us?
Well, he's got familiarity with Hafley's system. He was offensive coordinator and linebackers coach on Hafley's squad from when he was at BC, so he's got a lot of familiarity with the system, the scheme, and how Hafley likes to run things. So I'm actually very, very optimistic about this. And then also, too, as well, a little tidbit in here, that he was also at Ohio State with Hafley as well. So he has a long history and knows Hafley and how he operates and whatnot, too. So I think that he'll do a good job. But what do you think of Sean Dugan?
Yeah, I like it. I also it's the morning here, and as you can see, we're drinking coffee, but it's Anthony Campanelli. I don't know why I said James Campanelli. I have no idea where that's from. But Anthony Campanelli went to the Jaguars to be their DC. The other thing about Sean Dugan, where was he just at? And I should have prepped for this, but didn't he just coach in the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Bowl? Which one of those did he coach in? Shrine Bowl. So he
Shrine
was
Bowl.
the East coach for the linebackers in the Shrine Bowl, and obviously the Packers had another coach represented the Senior Bowl and Jason Vrabel. So a lot of young coaches for the Packers being given cool opportunities in some of these showcase events. So we won't spend a bunch of time talking about that because we want to get into the meat of the episode. One more road bump before we get into grading the 2024 class, though. Lots of chatter out there about trade talk. I don't want to consume the whole episode, although we could about it. So, Cooper Kupp is now available. Myles Garrett, he's officially requested a trade. There's even more buzz about Max Crosby. So last I heard, I was looking at some valuations. Cooper Kupp could be had for a 5th or 6th rounder potentially. Would you do that trade? And does that bring value to us right now?
No, his cap hit alone, I don't like it. He was really good. What was it, 3 or 4 years ago when they won the Super Bowl? But it did not take too long for Puka Nacua to come in there and insert himself as a wide receiver 1. Not to say that he's not, good or serviceable. He's had some injuries and a little bit of some injury history too as well. So, but for just his cap hit alone, I get the later on draft pick. I just with the cap hit for Cooper Kupp for what he is, I'd rather have my current group rather than try and trade for a Cooper Kupp right now, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm open to the idea because I don't mind the compensation given back in this. And, when we talk about Myles Garrett in a second here, I really don't like the amount of compensation that would be required that they're talking about to land him. This still gives you your first, your second, your third round picks. Not only in this year's draft, but next year's draft, which, obviously we need to continue to build that young foundation, especially with a lot of upcoming free agents in the wide receiver room. I don't hate it. I'd be open to the idea. I still think that maybe Devontae Adams becoming available after he gets cut and no compensation. You just sign him on a 2-year, $40 million, $45 million deal. I'd assume that he's sick of losing and would maybe take somewhat of a discount to come and play on a team that gives him a chance. So I don't hate it. I'm open to it, but we'll see. Myles Garrett, they're talking about a first, a second, and a third rounder for him as like a base or a minimum. And I think the Browns want those picks this year. So where do you stand on that compensation for Myles Garrett? Because I know you really want Myles Garrett.
Yeah, I mean, just let alone without all that stuff, just having Myles Garrett on our defense would just be absolutely incredible. It was shown this year, too, that if you want to compete with the Vikings and the Lions of the world, that getting pressure on their quarterback is the key to do it, which is what we could not do this year consistently. So does Myles Garrett solve that? Absolutely. Is he still in his prime? I believe so, for another 2, 3, hopefully 4 years. The Packers, they don't like to do this. Goody does not like to hold on or like to give up any draft picks, let alone for this. But a blue chip once in a lifetime prospect, a kind of unicorn, I'll say, like this does not come along very often. Hence, if you want to see some other pods where we talk about this, we talked about Charles Woodson. We talked about Reggie White. Blue chip unicorn type of talent and prospects, and that are still in their prime, a little bit older, but right, the Packers signed Reggie White when he was 32, still came in and was able to dominate. So I don't think that they would do it at that. That's pretty steep unless Goody really does want to go for a home run. I am more in the favor of giving up this year's first, maybe a third this year, or maybe a second next year, and another player like a Lucas Van Ness or something like that is something more intriguing to me. But I do not think that the Browns will bite for that. They're going to go for the one that's going to give them the most, value, all the draft picks and players included, right? So it's going to be a bidding war, and I'd be shocked if the Packers end up winning that.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet that it's like this year's first, next year's first, and, a player like an LVN, somebody that is a project but still is young and has high upside, and then like a third rounder next year. So I would totally give up LVN. It's hard for me to give up a first, but I would consider if we could work a trade out where we could give up LVN Alexander and maybe next year's first, I would consider it. Obviously it's an improvement along the defensive front there. LVN for Myles Garrett alone. You get rid of the Alexander problem and his cap. I guess we worry about next year's first rounder next year, but I think that improves our team, and we still get to make a selection this year. So,
what if you didn't know, the draft is in Green Bay? So that would be that'd be good. So,
a lot of chatter that any first round compensation from Green Bay will not be considered because the Packers want to make a pick that night with all the fans there. And, I'm going to be in attendance. My family's going to be in attendance. Maybe Rob will be too. And I'm not going to lie, I really want to see some Packers news on that night. But landing a superstar player, though, would improve the conversation year round. And then just Max Crosby, there's been a little heat about him. I heard from another podcast that Goody was rumored to be having open public conversations about Max Crosby, at the Senior Bowl. And, Goody, I don't take that anything more into that right now than Goody does claim that he is in every single conversation. And I think that's exactly what was happening. I don't think that's a lie. I think he does pick up the phone and calls. So Josh Jacobs, though.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Josh Jacobs says we need an edge rusher and a wide receiver. So
yes. So you have the more balanced, realistic take of getting Max Crosby. That's absolutely more realistic for the Packers and for Goody to be able to pull off. How much better would you think that Myles Garrett is over Max Crosby at this point? You know what I mean? Like probably a level or two, maybe, right? But Max Crosby is really, really, really good when he's healthy. So is he as good as Myles Garrett? Probably not. Not a lot of edge players are. Like I said, he's one of the best probably ever to play the game. So, but absolutely, if the Max Crosby was on our team right now, it would make our defensive line and our edge rush a lot better. So I'd be totally happy with that.
Hands down, a top 10 edge player in this league makes our
Absolutely.
team infinitely better. And he's only 27, so he's still got a lot of prime
and he's
left.
Still young. Yep.
Let's get to our subject for the day, though, because we could probably, like I said earlier, we could have that discussion for an entire show. And maybe in the future we will have some more of that conversation. But really wanted to get back and review our 2024 rookie class. We're going to go through this. We're going to talk about where they ranked amongst other rookies at their grade. We're going to give them a SoundsGouda grade. And just so you know, like these grades have a multiple of factors. Not only how did the player perform this season, where were they selected against other players that Rob and I really liked. And then, some of it is a weighted scale, right? We're going to get down to the 6th and 7th rounders, and regardless if they're on the team right now or not, or how their performance was, we got to take that for what it is. A 7th rounder is just a lottery ticket, and you got to understand that they may not be on the roster at this point in time, or that they haven't contributed, and we have to be fair in grading that, right? So Jordan Morgan, obviously a lot of discussion about Goody's process in the first round, not taking players that can help the team now. So tell me a little bit about Jordan Morgan, where he ranked amongst his peers. Let's start there.
Well, yeah. I think there was a lot of promise for Jordan Morgan. Unfortunately, the injury bug bit him already in his early career with the Packers in his first year. So he did only end up playing 186 snaps. He did end up grading out at a 59.2 for PFF for the year. Granted, there was obviously a very, very small sample size. And then his rank amongst rookie offensive linemen was 21st. But, me and Jordan were banging on the drum, and we had some other really good prospects that we really were liking over Jordan Morgan from last year. I know mine being Graham Barton. He ended up grading out at a 55.8. Then, granted, too, again, a much, much bigger sample size. He wasn't as injury riddled as, of course, Jordan Morgan was. There's Darius Robinson in here who graded out at a 48.4. Tyler Guyton was another popular Packers pick. Jordan, right? He graded out a 49.4 from this year. Braden Fisk, 56.5. He came on there strong towards the end of the year. Everybody's darling that I'm sure we'll love to get into, Cooper DeJean, who's mocked to to the Packers by quite a bit of different people, but stellar season to 82.7. So there was something there too. Real quick, Kool-Aid and McKinstry 66.1 and Max Melton at 55.5 were some other popular Packers players that honestly, like me and Jordan were talking about, and you can touch on this a little bit more, probably would have made a little bit of a bigger difference for the Packers for this year.
Yeah, and Max Melton probably was, for me at least, we started last year right before the draft, so we didn't have a lot of time to talk prospects. Max Melton to me was a second round, the day two kind of guy, so I think he would have been similar in the Jordan Morgan boat, that it would have been a little bit of a stretch, but we put him on this list because obviously cornerback and secondary became a big point of conversation throughout the year. I really think that, my top five guys that I wanted in the first round, Cooper DeJean and Kool-Aid McKinstry, were on that list. And for the reasons we've talked about, they would have made a pretty monumental impact on the 2024 season and beyond, considering where we're at with Ja and the depth at that position. So I want to be fair to Jordan Morgan. I think that, with Josh Myers potentially, leaving in free agency, he's probably going to be at least a 3-year starter for the Green Bay Packers. And if he becomes a league average, if he ends up being around a 60 grade, and these are PFF grades, just if we didn't say that, we're getting these grades from PFF. If he's graded at a 60, a 65, somewhere that over the next few years, and as a well above average offensive guard, that was not a waste of a first round pick, especially in the back end. So time will tell with Jordan Morgan. All that considered, SoundsGouda is going to give that selection a grade of a B-. We obviously didn't get Cooper DeJean, we didn't get Kool-Aid McKinstry. A little bit of it is still to be determined based on what we haven't seen from him yet. But I think we give him a B- because Goody could have selected a few other players that could have helped the team a little bit more. Although offensive line was still a position of need and a position that we talked about many times, a la Graham Barton or some of those tackle prospects that we would have definitely considered an offensive lineman in the first round. So let's talk about Edgerrin Cooper, Rob. So 554 snaps played. Obviously didn't play a lot in the beginning half of the season. It was pretty well cited that, they were trying to get him prepared to be ready. He had an outstanding rookie season in the end, an 85.7 grade according to PFF, and ranked first amongst rookie linebackers. Tell me how you feel about that selection, and let's explore some of the other players that were available when we took Edgerrin Cooper.
You just need to come on and listen, Goody. Listen to our picks. Hammers at home, they're always home runs. We never lose. No, I'm just kidding. Jordan and I really were banging on the drum. Really liked Edgerrin Cooper from last year's draft. He obviously came in a little bit later on towards the year, but when he really got his shot to be the star or one of the starting inside linebackers, he really shined. Was really quick, obviously really fast, really good to diagnose plays. Ended up being obviously a really good blitzer and pass rusher too, coming off the edge in certain blitz packages and scenarios. So there's a reason why he was ranked first here as well too. And he showed that type of production and college-ready production, Jordan, Texas A&M, that we really liked. So just want to make that a point of emphasis. But yeah, there was obviously some other really good picks there too as well for us in consideration. Michael Hall Jr., defensive tackle. He graded out as 67.7 PFF grade. Marshawn Keelan, your boy from
Neeland.
Western. Neeland, yep, excuse me. Defensive end, graded out at a 50.8. Zach Frazier, I believe he was a center from West Virginia.
Ended up going to Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep. And he graded out at 76.8. He was another prospect that I really liked. And then Chris Jenkins, I believe he was a defensive tackle from Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. And he graded out at a 45.4. So
yeah, I don't change the pick at all. And, Rob and I liked it. Obviously, there were others. There were plenty. I think Cooper DeJean and Edgerrin Cooper were probably like the two most mocked players in round 1 and round 2. So we're not alone in the Edgerrin Cooper bandwagon. But, Rob, what grade did we give our selection of Edgerrin Cooper?
Just a total F. Just failed for the year. Just wasn't good at all. No,
You're a troll.
Yeah. Of course. A, man, how could you give him any other grade? I'm ranked first amongst rookie linebackers, for where we got him. He obviously he's got a bright future, so it's an A for something.
Yep. Yeah, and all those other players we discussed, just interesting to note, but, not even really a part of the process because we hit a home run with Edgerrin Cooper. So Javon Bullard, so he played a lot this season. He had a few injuries, but, Javon Bullard got bounced around a lot in his role. He started out playing safety and then played down in the slot. Had to move around and really be a diverse kind of chameleon in this offense, which is really hard to do.
Yeah.
As a rookie. So let's just keep that in mind as we unveil his PFF grade. But he played 816 snaps. He had a grade of 54.2 on the season, which is kind of average, below average, but kind of remember most rookies are bad or average as they learn their role in the NFL. And as we have acknowledged, he had to learn a lot and a lot of moving pieces for him. So he ranked 27th amongst rookie defensive backs this past year. Some other players available. I'm not going to go over the whole list, but some that I liked or some of note. If we wanted to stay in the defensive back front, I really liked Renardo Green at the time. I kind of had a 3rd round grade on him. He ended up going to the Finners and had a 69.2 grade. He had a great year. Drew Phillips went to the Giants. Probably didn't hear much about him because the Giants weren't very good, but he had a 77.5 grade. He was another corner that I really liked at the time. Cooper Beebe was a center that went to the Cowboys. Clearly, he might not have been on the board for us really as a big need because we did draft Jordan Morgan. But, we could have flipped these picks around. Cooper DeJean in the 1st, Cooper Beebe, at pick 58. Maybe that would have been a little bit of a better process. But, Cole Bishop, another guy that we really banged on the drum for, had a 49.6 grade this year. Zach Zinter was a huge Packers name that went shortly after this, and he had a 43.9 grade on the season. So he had a pretty below average season with the Browns, and it'll just be interesting to see kind of how that tracks throughout the rest of his career. And another big Packers name, Kingsley Sayamatia. He's a tackle for the Chiefs. You've seen him in NFL primetime a couple times getting smoked. He had a pretty poor rookie season, 39.4. So overall, Javon Bullard, what kind of grade do you assess him on this rookie year?
Yeah, so we give Javon Bullard a SoundsGouda grade of B. Liked a lot of what he did this year. I do think he's a better slot/nickel defensive back than he is at safety. I know that there were some problems or just quick switches with him, having to go back and be safety this year. I'm thinking of the game in Jacksonville where Brian Thomas Jr. got the best of him, and then the game where Zane Anderson in Minnesota where he got hurt and he had to be thrusted back into that safety position as well to scramble and move positions around too as well. So a little bit, I don't count that against him. Overall, I think that there's still a high ceiling for Javon Bullard, and I think he can be really good in his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year coming up. So.
Agreed. We'll be brief on these next 2, although I think that there's some room for discussion. Marshawn Lloyd, I think we were all thrilled with the pick at the time. We never got to see what Marshawn Lloyd could do for us. He played 7 total snaps for us in 2020. A very, very small sample size. He got a PFF grade of a 53.3, which ranked 22nd amongst rookies. I don't even know how you can take that with much stock, though. Hard to grade 7 snaps and compare that to the rest of the NFL. Other players available before our next selection, which is at 91, we selected Marshawn Lloyd at 88. I liked Elijah Jones, probably much more like as a 4th round prospect, but he was taken between Marshawn Lloyd and Tyron Hopper. He didn't have enough snaps to qualify for a grade this year, so I'm not going to critique the process. I liked the pick. We're going to give Marshawn Lloyd and the selection of Marshawn Lloyd a grade of a C right now. That's kind of our baseline grade. It's inconclusive. I'm not giving it a D or an F because the guy was injured throughout the entirety of a season and had some bad luck. So right now we give that selection a C. Tell me about Tyron Hopper, Rob, and what are your feelings around that selection?
Yeah, obviously did not get as much time this year as well. He only played 18 snaps. So his PFF grade is 60.7, but again, an extraordinarily small sample size. He ranked 14th out of rookie linebackers. So I just really, again, too, like Jordan was alluding to from some of these other players, just not enough to really, grade on and see. We'll have to see if there's some room depending on what happens, with McDuffie and Eric Wilson, both being free agents, or if they're going to stay or if they're going to end up coming back and what contracts we would give them to be able to see if we could actually see some Tyron Hopper play this next upcoming year. But, some other players available too at those spots, Jerry Jones went to the Jaguars. He had a 69 grade for PFF. Adiza Isaac, I believe he was a pass rusher, right, for Penn State. Pretty long, pretty lengthy, pretty speedy. He ended up having a 66.2 grade. And then Taylor Demerson.
Dadrian Taylor Demerson, he went to the Cardinals, and he had a pretty nice rookie season. He had a 75.5 grade, which, you might like that selection at 91. But maybe the Packers' next selection in the 4th round at 111 kind of changes your opinion on that. I really would have liked to have Jerry Jones, again, for some of the reasons we've talked about at pick 91. He had a great year, and he picked off Jordan Love in that game where we played against the Jaguars this year.
Yeah, he looked really good. Yeah, I absolutely would have loved that as well. So for a SoundsGouda grade for this year, Tyron Hopper, obviously very, very small sample size, but we're going to give him a D.
Part of that is we overdrafted him. I think I still like what we can see, but I would have been much happier selecting him in the 4th or 5th round. And if we take Tyron Hopper in the 4th or 5th round, you feel a lot better about a player pretty much redshirting than a 3rd round selection. So.
Yep.
So Evan Williams, one of our rookie darlings, and honestly, probably one of our most hated or eye-raising picks at the time, mostly due to his kind of projection coming into the draft and draft season. We talked about him and how his stock rose through the Senior Bowl and Combine, and the Packers clearly found him as a high character, high intelligence guy. And man, he was a hell of a selection, ranked 6th among rookie safeties. At one point in time, him and Xavier McKinney were, in the first half of the season, the top safety duo in the league. He had a PFF grade of 72.5 and played a total of 533 snaps. So a couple other players that were available that we could have considered, but Tatter Bortolini, a center interior line prospect from Wisconsin, he had a 65.1. If we would have addressed safety earlier, there was a linebacker I like, Trice Knight. He had a 65.4. So maybe if we would have taken Dadrian Taylor Demerson the pick before, and we would have needed a linebacker still instead of Tyron Hopper, maybe Trice Knight would have saw a lot more playing time for us this year. TJ Tampa, highly talked about prospect for the Packers. He was talked about even as high as going as a 2nd round. He went in the 4th. He scored a 47.7 ranking on the year. So I think a lot of us kind of overhyped TJ Tampa compared to what he ended up producing, and how NFL scouts obviously saw him as more of a 4th round selection than a 2nd round selection. And one more guy. This was one of my biggest draft crushes.
Both ours.
Jaden Hicks, a hard-hitting safety from Washington State. He had an outstanding season, 0.2 per grade. I think he ended up with the Chiefs. If we would have drafted him instead of Evan Williams, I think these two players would have been nearly interchangeable.
Yeah.
But I can't hate on it. I love Evan Williams, the player, the leader, everything about it. So I would not trade Evan Williams for Jaden Hicks at this point in time. So this is another SoundsGouda grade of an A. Cooper and Williams will probably be, and hopefully Jordan Morgan, but yet to be seen. But those two are definitely the darlings of this draft class early on. So let's talk Jacob Monk. Rob, tell me a little bit about him.
Yeah, 0 snaps played. That's it. A PFF grade in 2024, obviously not applicable. I was loving what I was seeing from him as far as preseason goes, or at least what we got to see with him before the season started. I still think that there's a lot of potential, and again, too, a high ceiling for Jacob Monk. Again, too, like what happens with Myers this year, if he comes back, if he doesn't, some other offensive line shuffles. Morgan, can he stay healthy? There might be a bigger opportunity for Jacob Monk to come in this year and be able to play some snaps and put in a good PFF grade and see what the kid's got. So other potential type of players that we were looking at, Tyrone Tracy ended up grading off at a 58.4. So I would think that overall, though, for where he was drafted, I still like the potential of what he could become, and I think he'll have a lot more opportunities in this next year.
Yep. So we gave him a grade, SoundsGouda grade of a C, and a lot of that is we just haven't seen enough Jacob Monk to make a further distinction at this point in time. We'll go speed round kind of from here on out because I think the discussion gets, any player could have been selected now that we're in the, going into the 5th, 6th round and beyond, and could have gone a variety of directions. A lot of the Packers' needs have been addressed already at this point in time, but Kitano Ladapo played 68 snaps, had a pretty good grade of 72.9 on those limited snaps, technically ranked 5th amongst safeties, which, again, PFF doesn't rate for snaps or, weight that grade based on snaps played. I would love to see that as an additional metric in PFF.
Yeah.
Because I think we'd really have some rich data at that point in time. But not going to discuss other players available, but we're going to give this selection a grade of a B-. Rob and I both really liked Kitano Ladapo, and I think we both do. He obviously didn't get as many opportunities to play because he came into camp hurt early. Evan Williams just flat out won that job, and, Javon Bullard was kind of selected to be the other guy that was going to be a safety. So we'll see more from Kitano. And we give that a selection, a B-. We still like that pick. So hit us with Travis Glover, Rob.
Yeah. Travis Glover, offensive lineman. He only played 41 snaps. We all remember him coming in the Eagles for Elton Jenkins. PFF grade in 2024 of 35.1. A pretty big and bruising offensive lineman. His rank amongst rookie offensive linemen was 50th or last, in case you were wondering. Other players available, Tylen Grable, 53.3, which I believe, Jordan, you really liked at the time too as well. So he didn't have the best season as well, but also a rookie. I still think that there's a ton of potential, I think, with Travis Glover, but he's still very raw, still needs to clean up his technique. And we saw what happened when he went up against elite competition in the Eagles. He absolutely got schooled. So I think that he would be a good possible valuable depth piece for the Packers if he can continue to develop.
Mm-hmm.
And his grade that we gave him was we gave him a D for the year.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It looked bad when he was out there, but he wasn't really set up for success either, getting, significant action in the biggest game of the season, really. So, and I said I wasn't going to talk too much about it, but, Tyron Grable, which did score out at a 53.3, that would have been a much more versatile and useful selection than Travis Glover, who scored out at 35.1. So a much better use of a 6th-round pick. But,
Agreed.
Michael Pratt, he was drafted at 245, played 0 snaps as a Packer, did not have a PFF grade in 24, did not have a rookie ranking because he didn't play any snaps. We're not going to be too harsh on 7th-round picks. They really are lottery tickets, as we said, but obviously did not make the Packers roster, so we give this selection a grade of a D. And then we've got Kalen King, Rob.
Kalen King, yep, snaps played, obviously 0. PFF grade is not applicable. He didn't get any time. I know that throughout the year we were kind of wondering what the heck was going on with him, so I'm not sure if it was or what was going on. If the coaches must have felt that he wasn't ready to go, obviously. So kind of hard to give him a grade, and we'll see if he ends up, depending on what they do this year for the cornerback class, if he can come in and compete for this next year. But overall, it's middle of the row, but we gave him a C because we didn't see anything.
And unlike, Pratt, he's still on the roster, so easier to give that selection a grade of a C because he's still a Packer at this point in time. So when we do all the math and we bring that all together, what does our final grade look like for this draft class, at least following one season of play? We give this draft class a B right now, which is a pretty solid class. I think especially if Jordan Morgan can become a solid contributor along the offensive line over his career, maybe get a second contract with the Packers, this draft class has an opportunity to be a B+ or an A- selection. Obviously, we need to continue to see Cooper, Williams, and Bullard be good players as well. So,
yeah, pretty. Just real quick, just really excited how to see Jordan Morgan this year if he can stay healthy, and also Marshawn Lloyd is another one too that I would like to see incorporated into this running back room because he brings just a completely different element than Josh Jacobs.
We'll touch more on this later on. But, is there a chance that Marshawn Lloyd can take some of those orbit motion plays away from Jayden Reed and allow him to be a little bit more of a true wide receiver, a zone beater a little bit more? We'll talk more about that in the future, but I think that could be a role for Lloyd on this team. As we close, though, this is not a Packers note, but a Wisconsin sports note. I just want to say goodbye and good luck to Chris Middleton. In my lifetime, one of the best Bucs players that I got to watch play, all-time ranks for the Bucs. These are franchise rankings, second in games played, second in minutes played, first in three-pointers, third in points, third in assists, fifth in steals, seventh in rebounds, 12 years as a Milwaukee Buck, a 3-time All-Star, an NBA champion, and a gold medal winner. Lots of memories. You always remember Cash Money Middleton for being that smooth, easy release 3-point shooter, kind of just glides through the lane, almost puts you to sleep and hits you with the floater. He's now going to be a Washington Wizard.
It's weird.
Which is like the worst team in the NBA right now. And if I'm being honest, I'm not happy with the return we got. I know that Middleton's availability has been an issue over the last few years, but we get one of the least efficient players in the league in Kyle Kuzma coming back to the Bucs. And then you take the leadership and the camaraderie and everything that Middleton has meant to the team and the franchise. I don't know. I don't know that this improves the team and is the move they needed to make to push them to the championship, but I guess we will see how this turns out. All right, folks. This has been a little longer episode. Obviously, we had a lot to talk about today. So anybody that made it here to the end, we just 100% want to thank you for sticking with us, listening to our content. We really want to hear from you. So make sure to put your comments, if you're watching on YouTube, or hit us up on X. Put your comments in there. Let us know what you think. Tell us if you agree with these grades or some other things that you're thinking about following the draft class. But we have more great content coming every Wednesday and Saturday, so share this with a Packers friend or two. You can connect with us on X. Rob's at SoundsGouda with 3 A's, and I'm at Olson Jord. But until next time, Packers Nation, have a Gouda morning, a Gouda afternoon, and a Gouda night. Go Pack.
Go Pack.
Been wanted this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey.